Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu-alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I am your host Hajra Satti and joining me is my wonderful co-host Ali Munir. Assalamu-alaikum Ali, and how are you doing today?
Assalam, and a very good morning to you and to the viewers as well. I'm fabulous, Hajra. How are you this morning?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, and I think the humidity level has dropped a little bit
Finally,
in the atmosphere.
fortunately, because you know it was extremely humid and intolerably it was humid weather.
That's very true, and it was very abnormal in a sense because after the monsoon season, we're not used to witnessing such sort of weather, and that too because it's the start of the autumn, I would say. But obviously, with the climate change, with the discourses around the climate change, we are witnessing a lot of anomalies in the weather temperature.
I believe these are the perks of climate change that we are experiencing right now.
Especially when we are living in Islamabad, because Islamabad is a very moderate sort of a temperature, and whenever there used to be a extreme humidity after 2-3 days, we would witness rainfall. But we would see that in the coming days, the autumn season is also very dry, and then that dryness is leading to lots of diseases. And I think in the December or January, then we experience the rainfall. But we will hope and pray that this year that this sort of anomaly changes and we experience.
Well, I hope the climate change effects they subside gradually with time, but I think it is the time that we need to make efforts as well at an individual level as well. I mean, we cannot just blame the leaders, we cannot blame other people for the climate change. I think we should bring the change at an individual level as well.
That's very true, and that means I mean curbing our carbon footprint in the first place and making sure that we are habitual of having a lot of luxuries in our lives as the necessity, and we need to make sure that we need to go through lots of lifestyle changes, which is a very difficult task considering the fact that we are used to so many luxuries in the first place. But for saving the humanity, for saving the planet, for saving the mother nature, we have to do it in the first place. Otherwise, our survival is extremely difficult. And as United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says, that the humanity is at the tipping point in the first place, and if nothing is done, then we will of course suffer that. But moving on to our top stories, which is a very interesting segment because rupee has witnessed certain downfall in the I would say the dollar has witnessed some downfall in the market. So increase of rupees 0.9 in the interbank market during the previous week. Rupee appreciated nearly 2.1% across the 5 sessions to close at 296.85 against the US dollars in the interbank market. The currency closed positive on the all 5 days, extending its winning run to 8 successive sessions as momentum continued to favor the rupee. And I think our state is making lots of efforts at making sure that the hodlers and especially the money exchangers who are involved in those sort of black market activities of holding the dollars, there's extreme and strict crackdown against them, and because of these efforts we are witnessing that rupee is gaining strength against the dollar, which is the need of the hour, because obviously a strengthened rupee means less inflation and more stable economy.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is very true because the caretaker setup is taking very efficient steps for, you know, curbing the hoarding and the power theft as well, Hajra.
That's very true.
I believe that, you know, serious steps are being taken for the power theft as well in the country, and all across the country steps are being taken against the hoarders and the power thieves.
That's very true. And now moving on to our segment, which is a very interesting segment because there's a lot of discourses regarding inclusivity, regarding diversity and people who are differently able or mainstreaming disabled people. So we're very glad that we have been joined by someone who has so many feathers in his caps because he established the STEP, which is Special Talent Exchange Program, back in 1997. He is passionate about empowering people with disabilities, and the STEP is the only organization who has been appointed as a special consultative status with the United Nations, and he also established the rehabilitation educational facility in Dharki, Sindh. And of course, we are going to ask him to explain what are his initiatives and steps in making sure that in the policy making we include the people who are either differently able or disabled in the first place, because this is also a debate that what should we call them in the first place. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce my very worthy guest here who has graced the studio. He happens to be Mr. Atif Sheikh. He is the disability right activist. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for gracing our studio.
Welcome to World This Morning.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you very much for having me here.
Right. So we got your CV and that was very impressive. And before going on to, the red light went on, we were having this debate about whether we should call it differently able or whether we should call it disability, because labeling is very disabling in the first place. But he has a very finer points to offer in other school of thought, and I would also like you to please tell our audience whether we should call it differently able or disabled in the first place.
Hajra, thank you very much for highlighting this issue. This is critically important to understand disability from the social perspective.
Right.
Actually, we normally identify disability in the human being, and which is not the fact. Disability lies in the environment. If you have enabling environment, nobody will be disabled.
True.
So that word is disabled. When you don't use the software in your phone, you disable it. So when you disable the environment, you disable actually people. So we should not label the people in terms of categories of disability. They are persons with disability. That means person first approach. Person first, then their inability or capability. After the adoption of the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities in 2006, entire world has agreed that we have to find disability from the social perspective in the society, not the human being.
Right.
Let me give you an example. Like, if you don't have car or if you don't have any transport to come to this workplace, you will be disabled. But when you are provided with a car or any
with all the required facilities,
you will be enabled enough to reach here with all your comfort. That means if you enable the environment, nobody will be disabled in this world. So if we have been trying to fix the human beings for many decades, which was a mistake. So now in last 2 to 3 decades, there is a new trend in disability that we have to fix the environment.
Right.
We have to fix the infrastructure, communication technologies, so that everyone is included.
Right. So if I talk about the level of mindfulness or awareness, talking about decades of struggle for people with, special needs, and you had been a very strong advocate yourself as well. So what is the change that you are witnessing in today's era?
It's a radical, visible change, I must say. As I mentioned, in the last few decades, disability was the topic of only health sector. Like only medical professionals were talking about disability. They were trying to fix the human being. They were trying to identify the categories of disability within the human being. But the trend has changed now. Now we are talking about disability from the rights perspective, from the social model perspective. We are trying to fix the environment. And the most visible change within Pakistan, we have seen all the legislations, the recent legislation adopted by previous regime, the government, like for example, ICT Rights of Persons with Disability Act in 2020, Balochistan Disability Act 2019, Empowerment of Persons with Disability Act Sindh in 2020, so 18. Sorry. So these are all acts are based on the rights-based approaches. Now we have the legislation. We have international commitments. Disability is included in Sustainable Development Goals. Pakistan has ratified UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. We are following the insurance strategy framework for Asia Pacific. So now we have international commitments, national policies and legislation in place. All we need to do, we have to implement these policies. We need to understand from the best practices, like organizations, all organizations are implementing in the grassroots level. So we have to understand, we have to learn from those practices how to make sure that these legislations are being implemented and rights of people with disabilities are protected. Like for example, if children with disabilities are still out of school,
True.
there are very limited special education centers available for them. So we need to open up the doors of mainstream schools to make them accessible for them, so that every child can go to the same school with their siblings in the same classroom. If the environment is enabling.
Right.
This is a very basic example, like how we can send children out of school, children with disabilities to the mainstream school.
Right.
Similarly, when they are growing up, there should be opportunities for the employment, higher education, and social life. So the trend has changed. Now we are trying to include them instead of giving them charity or trying to fix them.
Right, right, sir. Thank you so much for saying that. And since you alluded to the fact that we need to couch this language in the human rights perspective, because this is the language that resonates with the global world, or I would say with the global environment in the first place. And there's a lot of discourse on disability, on inclusivity, on mainstreaming in the first place. And you've also established, mashallah, say Disability Job Center. So for our viewers who want to come out and who want to help, and especially people who are disabled, how can they reach you out, and what is this job center about in the first place?
It was an idea started long time ago, that people with disabilities who hardly get education from the higher education institution, they are looking for jobs.
Okay.
And corporate sector, they are also willing to hire them, but they were not prepared.
Right.
So we trained the employees or managers of the corporate sector to accept disability, to include disability in their human capital. On the other side, we build the capacity of people with disabilities themselves to be a potential candidate for the job market.
Right.
We connected microfinance institutions to provide them loans. If they don't get a job, they can start at least their own businesses. So recently we have seen that State Bank of Pakistan has announced a loan, interest-free loan for people with disabilities.
Right.
So these are the big things happening across the country. So to connect these dots, microfinancial institutions, corporate sector, and people with disabilities who are seeking jobs, we have created this platform, Disability Job Center, so that they can apply for the jobs, and the employers can reach out to the people, to potential people with disabilities.
So basically a harnessing environment is, being created for people with special needs. So sir, if I talk about, the current situation of people with, special needs, with disabilities. So how is the state enabling people with such needs, and how is your organization contributing towards enabling them?
Yeah, unfortunately, even after the struggle of decades, we still we have to say that people with disabilities are still uncounted population of the country. They are still living on the margins of the society.
Unfortunately.
They are the most marginalized people. Well, when you were saying about the climate change, I was just thinking that if we are not prepared for the climate change effects, for the environmental damages we are expecting after the climate change, the most affected community will be people with disabilities, because they are not resilient, they are not safe. Whenever a disaster happens in Pakistan, they are the last to rescue, they are last to help. In recent floods, we have seen that people with disabilities were left out.
That's true.
They couldn't rescue.
That's true.
The emergency response system is not disability inclusive. Disaster restoration planning is not inclusive. So what will happen if there is a climate change effect on the communities? Because climate change will not affect a certain community, they will affect across like everyone in this world, all the communities, all the countries.
But some disproportionately.
Yes. And the lifestyle will be changed. The sources of income will be changed, and the social structure of the societies will be affected. So we have to prepare ourselves that everyone is resilient, everyone is included in the planning when we are planning for a new lifestyle.
Right.
Right, and also when we talk about the accessibility, and when we talk about, obviously there's a lot of conversation like Ali alluded to before, that regarding the diversity and mainstreaming, and we do see that the government or the states are taking steps. For example, you go to metros, you will see that there is an option for people who are disabled to take either the lift or other infrastructure which is more accessible for them, right? But this is the core that we are talking about. In the fringes, we do not have that sort of accessibility. And you've also established the rehabilitation and education facility in Dharki, Sindh, right? So would you like to elaborate why particularly that area in the first place?
That's the reason actually. First of all, we were trying to identify the most rural part, the least developed part of the country, where there is no facility at all for children with disabilities to attend school. Secondly, we got a very good support from the Mari Petroleum Company. They were working in Dharki, so they helped us to establish that school. And this school is one of the state-of-the-art school, providing all international standard facilities for education and rehabilitation, which whatever is available in the world, they have been provided in this center.
Right.
So 240 children with diversified severe disabilities are attending that school, and for last 5 years it's been very successful.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Right. So, sir, you have mentioned that there are, state-of-the-art facilities for people and children with special needs. So, if I talk about from a financial perspective, not everyone, especially, amid, the financial crunches, Hajra, which, we are facing, everybody is facing right now.
Globally, yes.
So, how well these institutions are accessible? Is it for the privileged class only, or is it for the underprivileged class also?
We have very limited schools which are accessible, more inclusive for children with disabilities. They can be counted on fingers.
Right.
But the population of children with disabilities is huge. The magnitude of disability is huge. So they are not enough to cater all children with disabilities.
Exactly.
Like, for example, let me quote a figure from the World Report on Disability. It says that 10 to 15% people with disabilities are 10 to 15% of the population are living with disabilities, and similarly is the proportion for children.
So basically, what I am getting is a perception that this segment, this population of children with disabilities and special needs, they have started to come to the limelight, but still there is a lot more that needs to be done.
I totally agree with you. The issue has been highlighted. It was a grave issue. It was never discussed, but now it's under the discussion in the policy corridors, and we are thinking about. We have some very good examples, as I mentioned, the school in Dharki and few other very government institutions and private institutions. They are the very good examples for them to follow, to scale up, to replicate.
Right.
So we have some good examples within the country to follow. Plus, we have policies. Plus, now there is a need of investment from the private school system as well as the public education system.
Right.
And I'm very happy to share one more very recent development, that the federal government, the Federal Directorate of Education is taking a very much interest in inclusive education. So they started a project within Capital Territory to make all the schools inclusive as much as possible. So the process has started.
Right.
Though it will take time, but we are very much hopeful.
That's very true, and thank you for very succinctly putting it out there. But now, since you know that United Nations, the leaders are getting together in New York and the session is about to start, and since your organization STEP is also associated with the United Nations, so what sort of conversations do you want to be initiated in the United Nations platform, especially when it comes to the third world country like Pakistan, when we talk about mainstreaming inclusivity and diversity?
I'm very happy to share again that our colleague, a lady from Pakistan, she is a wheelchair user, Abia Akram. She would be speaking today at the UN General Assembly on the rights of women with disabilities in the global south.
Right.
And she's also talking about the gender-based violence issues against women with disabilities today at the UN General Assembly. So that's an honor for the country and organization and everyone here, especially for people with disabilities.
And I believe it's a wonderful opportunity for the people with special needs that they will be highlighted, and steps will be taken for them to ameliorate their problems and issues that they are facing.
That's very true, and I think it's a high time that the voices of Global South, they are already highlighted, but the steps that we are going to take in order to make sure that they are given the same opportunity as the other people are given. So now, sir, coming back to, because I remember one of a close friends, she was disabled, but she would never like to label herself as of that, right? So she felt, and she was very offended because she said that you're victimizing me, and I don't want to be victimized in the first place. And she was the gold medalist, and we used to go and teach from her because she has so many stories to share. But obviously, when we talk about it, so what do you think the conversations need to be? I mean, how do you think that we need to approach this topic when we talk about people who are differently able or people who have disability in the first place? So we are more sensitive in the first place, and we can have those conversations.
Actually, we are oversensitized.
That's
society about disability, and we think that this is a bad thing, or we are not accepting it as a diversity, which is the biggest issue. we cannot sort it out, we cannot make the society inclusive until we accept our disabilities and the society who are not people without disability, people I call them non-disabled people. They should understand disability as a diversity. So, the first thing, people with disabilities should embrace disability as a lifestyle. They have to accept it. Like everyone in this world has different needs, different challenges, and they manage their life through facilities, through services, or through adapting their technology around them to make their life easy. As I quoted an example that when you come here, you come on a car or a vehicle, you don't walk to your office from 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers every morning. That means you're adapting the facilities according to your need. So, when you accept your disability as a lifestyle, then you try to change your environment around yourself and you make it inclusive. Similarly, when organizations, families, houses, they understand disability as a diversity, they will create an environment. Let me quote a very interesting anecdote here, that every human, Quran says, the human being is created in the best form. So, how we can criticize a human being that it's incomplete? Actually, the society is incomplete. We have to make our things complete, the passages, chairs, transportation, languages, we have to make it inclusive and complete for everyone. So, we are still researching on the technology to make it complete for everyone. So, human being is complete and different and diversified. All of us are equal, but we have different fingerprints.
That's true.
That means diversity is there. So, we have to accept diversity and disability as a diversified lifestyle. And we can do a lot.
Right. Sir, of course, you are, mashallah, very accomplished, you are executive director for this step. But, in all this journey, what were the challenges that you have faced and what was your motivation for, advocating for people with, special needs?
Actually, I have learned, when you ask me that how long you have been working in the field of disability, I would say 47 years. Because since I born, I am facing all the different challenges every day. Being a child with disability, being a student with disability, being an employee, being an organization manager. So, I have been learning disability throughout my life. So, that what I have learned, I have tried to make it as much as possible that other people with disabilities, other fellow citizens in Pakistan, they don't face the same challenges in the future. So, we are at a step, Special Challenge Exchange Program, we are trying our best to make the society inclusive and to make the life of other people easy, so that they can be included. They don't face the children who are born in these years with disability, they should not face the same challenges which I have seen in 1970s or 80s. So, we are trying, our struggle is focused to make life of children, life of people with disabilities as much possible as easier in Pakistan.
Thank you so much for so wonderfully dealing with these issues, and I think certainly we need more people with such a momentum like that to make sure that everyone gets the equal opportunities, right? And like sir mentioned, that every person is unique and we have to accept that uniqueness as the diversity. And with that, we will go on a short break, and after we come back, we have a very interesting conversation lined up, that too hinge around the concept of diversity, inclusivity, but in the field of education. So, don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to World this morning, and Hajra, let's proceed to the second segment now. I think
now let's move forward, because when I alluded to the fact that every person is unique, every individual is unique, and we need to accept that uniqueness as a diversity, as a diverse way of living. So obviously that transcends to the kids too, because every kid is a unique. And when we talk about the discourses surrounding the mainstreaming, inclusivity and diversity, so I think there's one particular concept that we also need to be more cognitive of is the discourses regarding the dyslexia, dysphagia, autism, and lots of other such sort of neuro diseases, or I don't know whether we should call disease in the first place or not, but obviously we have someone who is an expert in the studio who is going to shed light on what does the activity based learning means in the first place, and how we can make sure that every child's need is catered to in a better way. So without any further ado, we are very glad that we have been joined by someone who happens to be a child psychologist and also a behavior consultant, Ms. Sobia Adnan. Assalamu alaikum, Ms. Sobia.
Welcome to World This
and
Morning.
welcome to World This Morning. So Ms. Sobia, let's kickstart a conversation. What does the activity based learning means in the first place?
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, activity based learning is not only for the special child, it is as much beneficial for the normal child as well.
Right.
So activity based learning concept should be very clear, because mostly what I have observed here in school, it's related to artwork.
Okay.
So basically it's not all the time related to artwork. Activity based learning is basically the learning of activities of daily living skills,
Right.
and to cope our challenges of life.
Right, right.
For example, if we take our kids to the, we introduce them to traffic lights and all that, but it should not be on books.
Okay.
We should take them to the real places and teach them how to cross the roads and what the traffic light means, how we can read the boards. These are activity based learning.
Right, right. Which
strategies basically.
Which should include the physical activity
Yes.
of it. Just having the academic component is obviously important, but obviously should be complemented by the activity. But Ms. Sobia, when we talk about every child and catering to every child's need, and obviously there are kids who are differently abled, I would say, or they have different sort of needs, right? And when specifically when we talk about mainstreaming, inclusivity, diversity, and the, I would say, conditions, I would say, or like the autism or like ADHD, they're very stealthy sort of the conditions, right? Because you cannot easily identify their symptoms or easily identify if the child needs to be catered differently, right? So do you think our schools are prepared enough to deal with such sort of students in the first place? What sort of conversations do we need to have in this regard?
First of all, as an expert opinion, we should should be focused on the mothers to be.
Okay.
They should know that about they must have some knowledge about that early signs of milestones. No? They should know what milestones are important for child to grow. If they know the milestone, they will before any doctor, before any teacher, psychologist, she will be able to the alarming point, she can recognize that.
Right.
So she can directly recognize. First, now in advanced countries, 6 months they are trying to find out the autism.
Right.
If the child is not, he's too much aggressive on different tastes, so this means there is something.
Right. So, you're talking about autism and, children with special needs and disabilities. So, here I would like to highlight the invisible disabilities as well. What's your take on it?
Yes, that is very, very sensitive area, because these are the kids, these are the people who are not, if I talk about the children, they are not accepted in normal schools as well in special school. So, special school, of course, when they saw them physically, they can see, they have all 5 senses, they will, they will not accept
but
them.
If they are not accepted in the normal schools, if they are not accepted in the special schools as well, so where they should go?
That is the very alarming point, because they have the special schools, they are focused more on visible disabilities, so they could not recognize, lack of assessment or overdiagnosed. Even sometimes the home environment or some issues at home, they can make a little bit aggression, they can create aggression, and the people, the psychologists even, they tag ADHD, but it's not ADHD. It's just every behavior which is learned can be unlearned.
Okay.
We have to work on it.
Right.
If every behavior the child have adopted, a normal child, it can be unlearned. But if it's by birth, autism, ADHD, Aspergerism and these type of syndromes, then we have to work on it, because they are neurological disorders. So first of all, to treat them, we need to understand them, and we need to assess where they lie. It's you can say mild autism, moderate autism, or it is mental retardation.
Okay.
Right.
So, I have seen cases which are severe mental retarded towards that,
Right.
but they are they tagged autism.
Right, right. But since you are also behavior consultant, and obviously let's talk about the children, and I mean we've also been subjected to it, Ali, in our life, and in a different, I would say, span of life, which is the peer pressure that we go through, right?
Definitely, definitely.
Yes, if some kid is doing exceptionally well, then we are constantly.
And you know, Hajra, I believe it is due to the lack of mindfulness. It is due to the lack of awareness that, you know, parents, they need to understand this thing. It is not just for the children with special needs. It is for your child, for a normal child as well, that you need to understand this fact that not every child is the same. The cognitive level, every kind of level in a child, his understanding, his behavior is different from another child.
That's very true. And when we talk about the peer pressures, and obviously that makes kids very cranky in the first place, right? But also we do understand our parents' needs, because they want us to perform well in the first place, right? So how do you think, as a behavior consultant, we need to strike that fine balance between making sure that our kids are competitive enough to deal with the world in the first place, and they're also not bogged down by very suffocating pressure that they're facing at the time, by constant comparisons, social comparisons and peer pressure that we're facing? How do you suppose that we deal this topic in the first place?
First of all is acceptance, lack of acceptance. You know, in this society, if parents, they accept,
right,
they try to work on the children, but our environmental and our socialization, you can say, it's not very easy.
right,
It's not easy for parents as well. But once parents and siblings, we should have siblings. You know, nowadays in teenagers, you will most of the patients coming to me are sibling issues.
right.
When they come to teenage, they are even real.
That's true.
Yes, they could not even, you know, they could not sit and eat together. They
That's
don't.
true.
They cannot bear. They don't want to share the clothes.
That's true.
You know, that's something very.
And they
Off about
experience
it.
social interaction anxiety.
Yes. So of course, then the anxiety, and they are always dreaming about this social media and the high status and things like that. So in such situation, where do the autistic child stand? You know?
Right.
So parents are more focused on than that. So it's very important that they should know the highest potential of the child.
Right.
Instead of focusing on the weaker areas, they should focus on the highest potential. And it's the psychologists and the teachers and the schools, you can say, job to find out that, which is they should work on that.
Right.
And for this, inclusive education plan should be introduced. Each child has different need. Each child has different IQ. That should be, we should work on that.
Right. So, you know, when we are talking about psychologists, when we are talking about parents, teachers, you know, for, you know, guiding, for teaching children with special needs who are differently abled. So, in what ways the teachers, the parents, they should be guided, they should be made aware, so that, you know, they accept this idea of disability, or, you know, their children being differently abled?
So, so it's very important for the psychologist, school administration, and the teachers and shadow teachers who are working with these kids, that before telling parents the weaker areas, they should they should show some motivational success stories of special children,
Right.
so that parents should be motivated, then they will work on the weaker area. But mostly what is going on is that we are all the time, we call the parents and we say, oh, he is not doing this, he is not doing this, he is a weak area, he is not doing all that. And then at last parents
and I believe it's the case with a normal child as well, because you know, as Hajra mentioned, that, you know, there is constant comparison that is made with the relatives, that
with social circle in the first place.
That particular kid is acing his studies, he's scoring high, he's acing in the extracurricular activities as well. So how do you see this?
Yes, that's very true. That's
it is a bitter reality of the
society. And we compare an autistic child with a normal child.
True.
We must such an injustice to the autistic child.
For both.
For both, actually.
For both, because we don't even support inclusive education. Because an autistic child has to learn how to go on with the society, as well as normal child must learn how to cope with the autistic children or autistic, so many disabled person. In my institute, I have a girl, she is world champion basketball, and she has been with me 8 years.
Wow.
And she is the one who welcomed the parents.
Okay.
So I don't need to say any, I don't need any motivational words. She's so
wonderful.
She's there now. So that is the thing which institute should apply for such parents.
Right. Ms. Sobia, since you've been in this field and you're dealing with students, or kids and parents, and I believe that parents needs more counseling that the students or their children, so that they are more adapted to the needs of their kids in the first place, right? And there is no standard, I would say, definition of parenting in the first place, right? So parenting comes, so we generally think that parenting is something very innate, right? As the moment a mother has a kid, so she has this innate ability to deal with that, but we often see that a lot of parents do make mistakes, right? And there is no proper counseling on how to become a parent in the first place, right? Which is very much required, considering the fact that there's so much awareness right now, and because of the social media and the fastly changing environment that we are witnessing. So when parents come into your center, what sort of challenges do you face in making them tell or making them accept that yes, you need to change your parenting circles in the first place, so your kid has an enabling environment in the first place, right?
First of all, I'm sorry to say that for a special child, parents don't have time.
Yes.
There are very few who will come and listen to us for the child, and even for their minor stationary things, they are not interested. No? It's what I know. It's harsh reality.
True.
So those who cooperate, they want them in 3 months to be a normal child.
Okay.
So that's their expectation. Unless like Zarish, like Shanze and all so many in Special Olympics bring something which normal child could not bring, then they accept, no, there is something, there is a spark in a child. So we should have counseling. There is no parent school in Pakistan. There must be some parenting school. And in for when a mother is, she's on board for a baby, we should talk to the parents. They should come to, if they have history of some child, some behavior disorders, they must come to the psychologist.
Right. Sure, go ahead.
They should get the sessions about that. And even for parenting school, mothers come and they say, okay, teach us how we can do speech therapy, how we can do, but this is discouraged. Mostly I have seen the speech therapist saying, no, you can't do it. It's our job because we have degree. But I think we should teach them. Of course, the therapist cannot live for
definitely.
No, and siblings should be trained.
Right.
If a family have a special child, the siblings should be trained, because mother and father, of course, for future you need it.
But again, here I really want to highlight the point of haves and haves not, the privileged ones and the underprivileged ones. So as you've mentioned that, the special schools, not all of them are accommodating, the children with, disabilities and special needs.
Right.
So Hajra, here I am concerned about the fact that, okay, fine, the special schools are there for, a class who can afford. But what about that particular class who cannot afford?
Right.
So
and there was this very interesting debate. I don't know if you grew up watching the Sesame Street, because I grew up watching those cartoons, and they were designed in the United States because they particularly talked about the special needs of the kids.
Exactly.
And yeah, they created, and the purpose of those cartoons was to create awareness in the first place. But then there was a lot of debate on those cartoons, because they're saying that when you talk about mainstreaming and when you talk about disability and inclusivity, so when you are confining confining the kids to people who are differently able or who have disabilities. So you are not making them prepared for the world outside, because the outside world is much harsher.
Exactly, I believe
it's not very enabling.
This is a brilliant point that you have highlighted, Hajra, because you know, if we are going to confine them in that typical box where all of them are together, so you know they won't be prepared.
You're depriving them of a lot of experiences which they are going to face in the practical world.
Not just from the experiences as well, but also from the challenges that they might face, and in this way you're not going to prepare your children for those challenges.
That's very true.
So, Madam, at the very first place, I really want to know that how do you see this debate of haves and haves not? And you know, as I've mentioned earlier, that you know, these schools are not accessible to every child.
Especially on the fringes, or people who are living in the marginalized communities, right? And there's lots of misperception. And I really don't want to go into that, because I feel that this is giving an airtime to that is really, really off in the first place. But the lot of misperception regarding people who are differently able. So how do you deal with that mindset? Because bringing around a behavioral change is a very, very difficult task, and being a behavioral consultant, I think no one can understand its importance more than you in the first place.
Yes, very true. It's I have no words to explain that, but like Step and Cure, we have started this, and Alhamdulillah, maybe many more also will come on, because we are taking the children who cannot afford, and those who are with multiple disabilities on diaper based, because there are you know, disabilities, but the diaper based kids and bedridden are the most difficult ones.
That's true.
And CP child who are brain are okay, but their physical is
CP means
cerebral palsy.
Okay.
So we are taking that. So we are also trying our level best to create a home reach plan for such kids who could not reach to the schools. And most of all over the world now, inclusive education is very much, you know, they are working on it. They are working on it, because you cannot
discount its importance in the first place,
right? Discount is also important, but I think if you know, Beacon House, I just want to, they have also started inclusion, and many others also working on it. But for the sir was talking about the who cannot afford, so we have started, and maybe many more will also. And in home reach plan, for example, one family have 6 special children, one family have 5 special children. So you know, we need to work on home reach plan. So that teachers and internees, students, psychologists, they should go home and they can work and they can learn also. But inclusive education is best, because if there is a school of for example, a small school of 25 rooms, if they plan one room for such children, 2 to 3 hours, I think teachers, you know, they should, they have same right.
And I think that you are also bringing to the point to very important, I would say, an environment in our, especially government schools, is that teachers are extremely overworked, because there is such a huge strength of the kids, and it's very difficult to cater to every student, right? So I think an average 20 to 25 students are fine for a teacher, but we would see that they have 50 strength.
Hajra, I believe that it is not just a matter of the government school. I mean, there are so many private schools who are, you know, focusing on money making rather than, you know, giving attention to the children.
They are just entities for churning out the students. You know, they are not creating very critical thinkers, and I think we need to work on that. And one very important thing that stands out in our entire conversations, and that I would like to take it as a message for home, is that we need to focus on the home-based learning a lot. So for the kids who are disabled, who have accessibility issues, they should also be reached out. And I think there are lots of volunteers that might help them out, because Pakistan is a very philanthropic nation. So thank you so much, Ms. Sobia, for coming here, for having this discussion. And we would like to wrap up our segment and bid you Allah Hafiz and farewell. So until next time, it's a goodbye and good morning.